Okay, there we go. All right, okay, I'm good. So one nice thing about coming to these events is kind of like a little fringe benefit when you come to an event like this, because I had like a 5 o'clock a.m. meeting with my team because we're working on a battery management system, hardware in the loop solution for a customer. And it was great because I'm in the meeting and Ben Wrightsman's like, well, you know, what we really need to do is talk to Eli. And maybe Eli can pull some strings and do blah, 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 blah. So it was great. I said, Ben, I'm going to talk to Eli in about an hour. So that was great. And then please pronounce your name again for me. Hasha. So then Hasha, I've had some questions and some challenges, and so Hasha's answering these. So another good reason to be here. So CTI, the Community Training Initiative. So how many of you have actually gone on to either the GitHub or where the lessons are, or gone over to gcentral.org and downloaded it? Who's actually seen it? Okay, great. We got 5 people, so we're all going to learn something new here. All right, we're going to talk about the motivation behind the CTI. We're going to talk about the mechanics around kind of what it is, and then really what's the mission? Why do we even care about this thing? So we're going to dive into this, and first of all, real quickly, who am I? I'm a CLA, a CPI, LabVIEW champ, taught my first LabVIEW class when I was 5. Been doing this NI LabVIEW thing for way too long. The thing I'm most excited about, if I look back at my career, is when we started the Certified LabVIEW Architect Summit. And there was a bunch of us that we would be going to NI week. We're like, no, we need to get together twice a year, not once a year. And we came up with this idea, and we started the Certified LabVIEW Architect Summit. NI bought in, and then Fabiola really stepped up. And I think we need to bring the CLA Summit back, and we can talk to Eli about that later and bug him about that. So I departed NI. It was great. The G Central. Oh, I have a typo there. G Central is a nonprofit in the U.S. that has been trying to do a variety of things in the community. Who knows what G Central is? Again, okay, 5 hands went up. Perfect. We'll learn a little bit about that too. Moved my family from Denver, Colorado to Franklin, Tennessee. For those of you that were here last year, and I did the quick little intro about NI, and it was great because when we were here, not last year, but 18 months ago, the boat at NI had already started to shift, and things were coming back to a LabVIEW-centric, community-centric world, and it was fantastic. And in my session, I was making references to how many user groups we want to have. And so Eli, my comparison was the number of Buc-ee's gas stations there were. So those of you that were here last year, I mentioned Buc-ee's. The biggest Buc-ee's on the planet is now down the street from me, so I'm real excited about that. You can look up Buc-ee's. I spent 2 months at a startup. It was great. It was 2 months where the check was really good. I knew I wasn't going to last there forever. I saw the red flags, but I had a whole lot of fun. I was constantly in the lighting lab at Ford, and it was such a blast. And then I'm now at LHP Engineering Solutions. I absolutely love working for this company. So what do I do today, or what I do today? So from a business perspective, the company I work for, LHP, for those of you that know controls theory, there's the left-hand plane is the plane of you have your control system is stable. So that's what it stands for. We got started at Cummins. We know hardware in the loop from an automotive perspective, as well as anybody else on the planet. And so there's a lot that LHP does that has absolutely nothing to do with NI. But when you get to the point where you first have your models, and then you're gonna test your models, and then you have your embedded code, and then you build your subassembly for whatever you're building, then you start when you get to the prototype stage, then you're starting to use CREO. And then you get into hardware in the loop. So I'm on the hardware in the loop side. I do business development, but I tend to also wear my solutions architect hat. And I'm becoming a Veristand expert as well. So that's my day job. So I've talked to a few of you all about different things around hardware in the loop. Who here is from Braymac? Who's here right now? Is there anybody in here today? Okay, great. Let's talk, and let's talk about Driven too, because we own the Driven products, so we'll talk about that. But I'm here to represent CTI. But if you have any questions, I want to talk Hill, want to talk real time, Veristand, functional safety 26262, let's talk about that. So when I have free time, which is not very often these days, And so, but when I do have free time, I like to speak on creativity. So I have a TEDx talk. I started a Substack. I only have one post. But eventually I'm going to have time to do these things. Like on that 14-hour flight back home, I'm going to try to get out another Substack post. But I love talking about human creativity. I love talking about AI. So ping me on that. And what's interesting, I'm going to go off on a short rabbit trail. But I can't see the clock with this here. All right. What time am I finishing? 9:40? 20 minutes. But I'm going to go on my rabbit trail. So if you want to learn something new, read an old book. This is a fantastic book written by Joseph Weizenbaum. So Joseph was a scientist at MIT, and in the late 60s, he came up with this machine called ELIZA. And if you look at any history of AI, you'll hear about ELIZA. And so ELIZA, its name, named after Eliza Doolittle and My Fair Lady. So what this thing did is it was just a terminal, but he programmed it to do psychotherapy. And there's this branch of psychotherapy when you go sit down to the therapist, and I say, Fabiola, I'm really mad at my kid today. And then you would echo back, what's your kid's name? I would say Evie. And then you say, well, what did Evie do? And then I would say something. And so, but you can program that really, really easily. And everybody at MIT would go hang out with ELIZA. So they're just banging away on the keyboard and exploring ELIZA and getting attached to a keyboard. Not even a bot with somebody's face on it, but a screen and a keyboard. And I love this quote that he says, short exposures to relatively simple computer program could induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. There is so much wisdom in here, and some of this wisdom is going to show up in my Substack. So my goals are have 3 conversations around hardware in the loop. I've done that. My other goal is to get 3 of you guys to subscribe to my Substack. So that would be my other goal. And then I have a final goal on CTI, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. So our giants are female. Evelyn Hollenbach, Evie Hollenbach is my daughter. So she is my giant. That is her personality. She didn't get any of that from me, I promise. George Strait concert. This is where she's working. She worked on the K-Cup line for Keurig Dr. Pepper. I got stories there. This is a fun picture. Does anybody know John Gianangeli? He's a LabVIEW champion. Nobody knows John? Well, you guys know John, but anyhow, that's his sister's restaurant in Boston, and it's awesome. What I really appreciate is she really knows herself. She's an independent thinker, and she challenges me. So that's why she's up here, and she graduated, and she's off the payroll. She challenged me to do a half marathon in Knoxville not too long ago, so that was fun. Motivation. So the 3 things we're going to cover real quickly is the motivation behind CTI, the mechanics around CTI, and then the mission behind CTI. So motivation, we have Steve Watts, we have Derek Bomarito, and I think I'm going to pass on. No, I am going to shift over to, if I hit the, let's see, there we go. So if I do that, then I should be able to. There we go. I want to come over here first. All right. So Steve Watts. There's an interesting story about Steve Watts. So everybody who knows Steve Watts, most of you guys should know Steve Watts. Yeah. Punk rock dude. He's got all the punk rock t-shirts. And there's actually, the story I'm telling you is public. It's actually on one of my YouTubes. So every year in January, Steve goes to the store and he buys 3 pairs of track pants, 3 pairs of stretch pants. And that's his wardrobe for the year, because he wears his track pants, his punk rock t-shirts, and when he dresses up, he puts a button down over his shirt. And it was great to do an interview with him and York Hempel, who always has a very nicely pressed white shirt. So Steve Watts is practical. We have a podcast that we do every month, except we're about 2 months behind, called This Month in LabVIEW. And I'll give you guys a link to that a little bit later. And it's TMILV, and so is the acronym for it. And he's the professor of pragmatism. He's a very, very pragmatic guy. And so when you listen to TMILV, the one we did in March, we actually talked about the CTI. And Steve has a very egalitarian heart, and it bothers him that there's those of us in the society who are privileged, so we get to learn LabVIEW. We get to play with these expensive toys. And so part of his motivation is, why can't someone in another country, in whether that's Honduras or whether that's Vietnam or wherever it might be, why can't they also learn LabVIEW with very inexpensive hardware or an emulator? And I'll talk about my motivation in a little bit, but that is a lot of Steve's motivation, is make sure that anyone can learn LabVIEW anywhere in the world for free. Now, I can claim that I came up with that phrase for the CTI, anyone can learn LabVIEW anywhere. It was my one brilliant marketing idea for this decade. So in 2030, hopefully I'll have another brilliant marketing idea. That was the one for this decade. All right, then we also have, we have Derek Bomarito. Brilliant guy. He is a rocket scientist. He's worked for SpaceX. He's worked for Blue Origin. He's worked for NI. He's worked for Halliburton. And so what Derek does is, for the CTI, you might as well just unplug it because it's not working anyhow. It died. So you've got a Raspberry Pi breadboard, and then you have the Pico board. And so Derek has been writing the firmware for this. And I don't know what version we're on yet, but he's done a lot of that work. And Derek's motivation is different. He's a hobbyist. He wants to automate everything in his house. And so he is really excited about the hobbyist aspect. You got Steve, who's doing it from kind of more of an egalitarian aspect. And so there's just a lot of different motivations around the CTI, and a lot of people really involved in it. So let's go back here, and from current slide. All right, that's the motivations. But there's actually, I think, a little bit of a deeper motivation here. And if you think about it, is there something?
It's not connected. So.
Okay, so we're good. So there's also kind of a little bit of a deeper motivation. It's at the end of the day, we want, from the CTI perspective, we want more LabVIEW adoption. And so LabVIEW adoption is something we're really driving for. And from a pragmatic standpoint, Steve's a partner. If there's more people using LabVIEW, then he's going to have more customers. So this is about a LabVIEW adoption. And I think and LabVIEW has some interesting aspects to it. And I was hoping to grab the picture of the coffee mug that Eli had. I'll post it up on LinkedIn later. But basically, there's a phrase there that says, program how you think. And we've had posters around program how you think. And it's interesting because I'll talk to someone who's like, LabVIEW, is that really a language? We've all heard it. But when you think about it, LabVIEW is the only language designed to interface to hardware. It was designed by engineers for engineers. And as humans, our brains, we think graphically. I was trying to get down to what the statistics are, but I read the statistic that your brain can consume graphical information 60,000 times faster than it can reading like a paragraph of text. So I sent my buddy Grok off to go do some research on that. Well, that number, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if there's any science around it. But when you look at some of the articles, it's probably 10 times faster. So if you think about it, I can look at somebody's program, kind of analyze it real quickly. I can do a code review and, a high-level code review in about a minute and a half. But if I have to go read somebody's Python or somebody's C, it takes that much longer. And so there's so much value in that. And now some people just don't like the fact that it's graphical. When I was in sales, I had a customer who just didn't like the fact that LabVIEW was graphical. I get that. But I just love the graphical nature. It's designed for hardware. It's going to be 39 years old soon. And I think the best years for LabVIEW are ahead. And that's what the CTI is about. But I want to have one more story and then talk about my motivation, and then we'll shift to the methodology. What is the CTI thing? I was talking to a former VP from NI. We were having lunch or brunch the other day, and just talking about the early days of NI and the passion that Dr. T had for this community. And so my buddy was sitting next to Dr. T during a NI week keynote. And I don't know the year. Eli might remember, Fab, you might remember, but it was the year that the gentleman had used LabVIEW to automate cataract surgery. So cataract surgery, cutting your eye, and it's a very painful thing. And he had used the NI stack to automate that process. So it was a lot less painful for the customers. So my buddy, who's the VP, former VP, he's like, he sat there and watched Dr. T have just tears come down his eyes, because that was what his motivation was really to empower people to do amazing things with the NI toolchain. So what's my motivation? So my motivation gets to giving back to our kids. So I am probably working for about another 10 years or so, because I got to pay off college, because even though one of them graduated, I still got 2 more in college. But if I'm retiring in about 10 years or so, I want to be teaching STEM and having lots of these to kids in underprivileged locations. Now, underprivileged could be down the street from me at a juvenile detention center, and I live in Tennessee, and there's some rural areas, and there's some kids there that have no opportunity to be engineers. What do we do? How do we get in there and empower them? My husband and I scuba dive a lot, and we've gone to a lot of different interesting locations, and we go to these places, and whether it's the Bahamas or Jamaica or Honduras, this teeny tiny island next to another island off of Honduras, amazing kids and families. And you're walking around the town, and the kids are at school, and they're excited, they're on the playground, and what is their career going to take them to? Oh, they might be able to work at a resort and get good tips. Oh, the engineers might be able to be a mechanic on one of these liveaboard dive boats. That's not a pretty place to work. So there's this one town, and they have this one K through 12 high school. I am going to be there, and that group is going to have a great STEM education at some point. I don't know when, but that is my motivation behind CTI. It's how do we empower the kids? And there's an important piece of this, because I mentioned creativity, so I never give any kind of presentation without weaving in creativity somehow. And it's interesting, when we have that creative idea, we get a dopamine hit. And we're wired to create. And we forget, as engineers, we're like, oh, well, we're left brain thinkers and we're analytic. We're not artists. We're not, well, some of us are amazing artists, and some of us have amazing art studios as part of their teaching studios. I'm pointing at Fab. And so STEM being STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math. But as engineers, we are creative thinkers. And so watch my TEDx talk. I talk a little bit about that, but it's the dopamine hit. So why do we love coming to these things? We're sitting here, we're learning, and then you get up from your chair and you get all these ideas. So we're basically high on dopamine for 2 days. So that's another reason why we love GDevCon. All right, so that's the motivation. And we're gonna get to maybe your motivation real quickly. But let's talk about the mechanics. What is CTI? CTI, the Community Training Initiative, is 3 things. It is the hardware. So, you know, Dr. T would not have been excited maybe for us running around and doing all our LabVIEW on a Raspberry Pi. So this is CTI. So this is CTI hardware. And it's also the software. And so it's the firmware, and it's the drivers, and it's and then the LabVIEW VIs, and then it's also the lessons. And so we have very, very specific lessons in CTI. And so that's all it is. It's hardware, and it's software, and it's the lessons. And I'm going to get to Raspberry Pi versus NIDAC in just a moment. But there's a little bit of glue. And so if you want to look at the glue and where you go learn more about CTI, because it all kind of has to get connected, we start off at G Central. And so I'm going to come back to that site in just a minute. And then, and so at that site, you can get, is how you do the download. And so when you do the download, and you can go see this on our TMILV This Month in LabVIEW video. I mean, download, Fabiola may know the numbers better, but it could be, depending on your internet speed, like maybe 5 minutes or something like that. And then basically what the download does for someone is it installs Linux. There's a virtual machine. It installs Linux. It installs the community edition of LabVIEW. It installs all the things. And then there's just a little bit of setup that you have to go through. So if you think about it, these kids in Honduras, they're going to be able to download the CTI. And if they don't have this, then there's an emulator. They can learn everything for free. And a friend of mine was challenging me, well, you have to have a laptop. All the kids have a laptop in wherever it is. There's always a laptop that somebody can grab. So it's making that really easy. Now, I don't live in Linux. Some of my friends love Linux. I do not. So I live in the Microsoft world. And so living in the Microsoft world, it's also super easy to get everything done. There's a YouTube channel with stuff from Fab. There's a YouTube channel with stuff from Norm. And then there's the GitHub where the repositories are for the firmware and the lessons and everything. This is where you're going to go. And since I was having internet issues, I don't have the QR code up here, but I have it on my phone. So I'm going to make sure all of you guys get the QR code because that's where I have all the links. So you can go back and look at all the links. So this is what you'll need to know if you're going to use and consume the CTI. But my objective here is to get more of you guys involved, because how many hands went up when you're like, I know a professor, I know a teacher, I know a kid. I could be part of this. Who wants to be part of CTI? Okay, outstanding. Then you have to join the Discord. So the Discord is where all of the action is happening. And whether it's Derek and his firmware, whether it's some of the lessons, whatever it might be, you need to join the Discord. When you have my virtual business card, you'll be able to do that. All right. So why the CTI? The professor of pragmatism created a pragmatic way to teach LabVIEW. And in the interest of time, fortunately, I have the picture here, so I'm not going to switch over to LabVIEW right now, but this is the first example. It's 3 VIs. That's all it is. And it's 3 VIs, and these 3 VIs reduce TTBL. We have another acronym. So I know Fabiola will probably know what TTBL is. So when you're learning a language, what is the first example you always code? Hello world. And so you want to code hello world, and you'll want to turn an LED on. So when you go watch Tamil, you'll see Steve is excited about, I just want to turn an LED on. I'm still a kid. So it is time to blinky light. So when you have just 3 VIs and it's super simple, time to blinky light is really reduced unless you fried the LEDs on your Pico board. So, and so it's interesting, it's very simple, it's very pragmatic. One of the things I like is he's using Visa, so they've designed it to be just like Visa. So you're sending a command, receiving a command, send a command, receive a command. Yes, we would like to be able to do NIDAC as well, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So it's great because it shortens the time. I got cheap hardware, and it's very, very practical because whatever I'm learning, even though I'm talking to this, it's the same stuff that I need to learn. And when I'm talking to students, what's great, and you can get on LinkedIn and find it, I'll put that on my virtual business card as well. I'm teaching kids the same freaking stack that's being used to launch SpaceX rockets, that's being at mission control and launch control and engine test and the autonomous drone ships. It's the same stack. Now, they're not using Pico boards, and they have some pretty sophisticated actor framework stuff, but it's LabVIEW. So that's exciting to be able to teach kids that. So now there's some other things about the CTI hardware that's great. When I was working for the startup, they were doing some crazy stuff, and they were writing drivers. They're kind of recreating a lot of stuff, which was crazy, but we would have problems. So I could use this just to test the drivers. If any driver out there can do a star ID inquiry and get information back, then I know that I have all the software installed that I need. That was huge. The other thing is, I am working with a company, sort of, kind of, but they do this crazy cloud stuff that kind of blends the lines between cloud and desktop and everything. And so I've written Python in their cloud tool to talk to this. I've written JavaScript in their cloud tool to talk to this. So it's been great. I'm going to create a custom device in Veristand because now I'm in hardware in the loop world. And then I have this crazy fun idea that I got when I was at Cummins. And so when I come back again to present, then I'll present that crazy idea, hopefully. And so I know Fabiola was talking about, having the 3 computers and desktop execution trace toolkit. the people that you're going to meet when you have this, you're sitting at an airport or in, I usually will hang out in like one of the little clubs or at a restaurant, and you got this connected to your laptop. Interesting technology people come up and talk to you to go find out what you're doing. So bring this in the airport with you, and is very useful. So we'll get through this pretty quickly here, but I did teach the CTI at a University of Colorado Boulder, and it was 5 days, 4 hours. And the reality is, to go through the CTI lessons as they are, it's only 4 hours. So we added a lot of different material and learned a lot of lessons. I did a lot of variations. One of the key things is it was great with the kids to have structured lessons and then unstructured time. Give them some sensors. Make sure you got a great sensor pack with you. Give them some sensors, and then they can go play. I actually got this through the security in the US, which was really awesome. So structured and unstructured time. Right now, there's no slides for CTI, so I created some slides for the course, and I think the students really, really need slides, and they like very fun, creative slides. There was some additional content, learning content I wanted to have, and so we incorporated, Piotr Ma has some great videos, YouTube videos, I'll have a link to that as well, and then that he's done. So we use that to complement the existing lessons. I added a lesson on the event structure because I wanted to make sure they had here's the bare minimum that you need to go be successful, and they needed the event structure. We needed to have type defs. So these are my lessons learned, but so basically, in summary, CTI is still 3 things. It's the hardware, it's the software, and it's the lessons. So there's still a couple things missing. We've got the foundations, but here's my analogy. I have my favorite tan leather boots that I wear everywhere, and they're kind of scuffed up, and they're scratched up, and they need what we say in the US, a little spit and polish. They need some polish. The shoes are great. They're foundationally great. They just need some polish. That's what we need in CTI, and that's where we need some more people to get involved. Like, it'd be great to have a sensor kit. Where's John? Okay, it'd be great to have a sensor kit. And you have your little sensor kit, and you get this, you get all the things, and no matter where you are in the world, you can go get all of your stuff with your sensors. That would be fantastic. So there's a lot of little things that we want to be able to fix. So the mission, if you choose to accept it, is to get involved. So find me and have a quick conversation and find ways that you might want to get involved. And what I'm really excited about, G Central is this nonprofit organization that has been working in the LabVIEW community. So if you're not from the US, and I don't know how things work here in other countries, but if you want to stand up a nonprofit organization, is a pain in the ass. It is really difficult. And you don't do those things lightly. So G Central was stood up several years ago, maybe it was like 7 or 8 years ago, with the sole purpose of doing some stuff for the LabVIEW community. And the initial mission of G Central was going to be to come up with, here's this location to get all your LabVIEW source code, like a single place to go get all of your LabVIEW source code. So they were trying to do PyPy, and the LabVIEW version of PyPy, and I'll be done in about 45 seconds. And so, maybe 60. So they stood it up to do that, but Jim Kring solved the problem. And so we have this nonprofit. We've been doing little things here and there, but we didn't have a mission and a focus and a drive to get there. So we voted on Thursday, this is our new mission. Collaborating with NI, collaborating with academic, and working with NI and getting you guys involved. Like, I know John's going to be making the little pack for these things. We already have that figured out. So there's so many different ways to get involved. So let me know. I think this is at its infancy. I think from our perspective at G Central, it's going to take us a month or two, end of summer, working with NI before we're really coordinated. And you can call me or email and say, Nancy, here's how I want to contribute. And I can say, okay, go over here. So we want to get as much enthusiasm and excitement. We don't have time here for the Q&A, so catch me in the break. And but I want to finish with one small thing. My goal here was to get a third of you involved, somehow a third of you involved. That is my goal from here. And as we conclude, final thoughts on CTI. To steal a phrase going back in the day, don't leave home without it. Take it with you everywhere. You never know where it's going to come in handy. But I would encourage everyone, get the hardware, get some sensors, play around with it, and you'll figure out how you want to get involved and how you can help. So thank you. I apologize for my little difficulties in going over, but we can talk more offline. Thank you, guys.